Good afternoon. If we could have everyone take their seats, we're going to be respectful of everyone's time and get this program started. My name is Christopher Miller. I am the Senior Director of Education and Community Engagement here at the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, voted the #1 history museum in the country by USA Today. On behalf of our president, Woody Keon, as well as our brilliant staff and volunteers and our members, we welcome all of you. Those that may not be a member of the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, we hope that you would consider becoming a member, and so that you can be in tune to support what we constantly are doing. I also want to take the time to thank you for navigating the changes that we have gone through over the last 48 hours. Due to some unfortunate circumstances, we had a water leak that caused some very challenging situations, and so I'm glad that you were able to traverse your way to us, as well as I know parking was a bear, traffic is a bear, but you are here for a meaningful, good conversation, but as well as to see some clips from a very powerful documentary. I won't tell much more than that, but I definitely want to thank those that have participated and been a partner of everything we have going. I definitely want to thank CET and PBS for doing this outstanding documentary as we celebrate 50 years of hip-hop. I want to thank the Santangelo Group, who is the group that provides us with the Cincinnati Music Festival, and I believe it's the second largest black music festival in the country. And so I know we have friends and people that are visiting in town for that. Definitely want to thank Procter & Gamble for being the sponsor of the Cincinnati Music Festival, and as well as our community partners, Elements, which is a hip-hop cultural center. You're going to hear a little bit more from their executive director, part of the conversation. Just wanted to thank all my staff that is here and everyone that has played a role in us coming to this hour so that we can have this wonderful program. So without further ado, we're going to get things moving, and I would like to bring up Dr. Lisa, who is with CET PBS, and she's going to introduce these clips. If you want to know about timing, just give you a quick layout. It's going to be approximately 40 minutes worth of video that we will see, and then we will have a conversation that will take place right here with some very brilliant people and a very special guest. So if you can give a nice warm welcome to Dr. Lisa. Thank you.
Hi, I am Dr. Lisa Sansali-Yazdian, and I manage education and engagement at CET. So CET is your local PBS station. It is my job to connect you and your families to information and stories you need and want, and to engage you in experiences like this. So Fight the Power is a 4-part docu-series that explores the origins of hip-hop and the social, cultural, and political impact it has had on the world. So Chuck D and Lori Bula, who is the president of the entertainment company representing Public Enemy, among others, brought this project to PBS and BBC Music because we not only make incredible documentaries, right? We are a trusted and truthful source. So we're going to begin by viewing some of these clips from the 4 different episodes. Episode 1 is called The Foundation, and in this clip, we're going to get a snapshot of the 1960s, the loss of political figures, and the rise of new leaders who would propel the civil rights movement forward. In episode 2, Under Siege, we'll take a look at the 80s and the impact of Reagan's war on drugs had on the black community. Episode 3 is the culture wars. We experience the 90s, the politics of Tupac's music, the change in genre, and the attack on hip-hop. And finally, in episode 4, Still Fighting, we enter a new millennium, 9/11 happens, and we have hip-hop's response to federal decision-making. Thank you. Enjoy.
My mother used to be ironing clothes, and it just stuck in my head, the funeral, the whole procession. A few years later, his brother, Robert Kennedy, was shot and killed. Malcolm X was shot and killed. And Martin Luther King was shot and killed.
I can remember Dr. Martin Luther King had got assassinated, and that was the first time that I seen my father. He actually cried. That was the beginning of me just understanding black people's role in society.
The assassinations, the Vietnam War, knowing family members that were going off to the Vietnam War, being drafted in front of our own eyes. My mother would say at an early age, you know, this war is going on, so I think, you know, you should be a conscientious objector.
Can you tell us, champ, why, in your view, you deserve to be exempted from military service?
No, I have nothing to say. Everything that's been said is in the newspapers.
I was privy to all those things that were going on in the 1960s. And they had a profound effect not only on me, but our community that we lived in.
Poverty, unemployment and frustration led to 4 days of rioting, burning, looting and killing that had never been seen before in America.
There were riots almost every single summer in the 60s. And it was because the social injustice system was just as bad then as it is now. And we were trying to get our rights. We were trying to live in spite of all the madness that was taking place within our communities.
You're just getting tired of being pushed around by you white people, that's all.
What happened is just a prologue, because whites still don't believe that black people mean it when they say that we want power, we want black power.
Civil rights movement was killed when they killed Dr. King. The only movement now that was available was the Black Power movement.
This country has never cared about black people. That's right. They don't give two damns about us. And all of us always turn around worrying about what's good for America, what's good later for America, what's good for black people. That's what we want to know. It's time to make a change.
The whole thing was, before we can talk about making a change in the outer world, we got to clean up our world. And so that was the mission.
I remember the Black Panther Party would go to Manhattan and was serving lunches to kids in the summertime. Later on, the Nation of Islam were having their movements in Harlem and around the New York City area.
You had the Nation of Islam backing you. You had Minister Louis Farrakhan teaching you about yourself. You had real Christian ministers. Had you believed Jesus was a black man, all the Bible characters were African.
The roles of our black political leaders and religious leaders played a role in the consciousness of hip-hop. That knowledge of self, pro-black message.
This was a period where we were breaking out of that shell and we were coming forth and we were seeking power, and we really felt that we had the system on its heels.
Violence is a part of America's culture.
When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes.
As that consciousness was raised with people saying, well, we asking questions that ain't getting answered by the society, at least we need the music to say something.
When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes.
So it was a snowball effect, black snowball effect in our neighborhood especially. So obviously it bled to the music, and it reciprocated back and forth.
And blood will run through the streets of Harlem, drowning anything without substance when the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. I hope Pearly White.
One of my most famous poems is When the Revolution Comes. I didn't make that line up. That was a line that a lot of folks were using as a preface to something that we were hoping was going to come. So I took that line and blew it up and just talked about a bunch of things that should take place when the revolution comes.
Speak not of revolution until you are willing to eat rats to survive. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes, guns and rifles will be taking the place of poems and essays.
I noticed that when you hit people with thoughts that they've already had, they will gravitate to you that much more.
The last poets were like your uncles who definitely laid out the groundwork. Poets were always going to give you the dirty on everything, the truth. That's very important, not only for in the realm of hip-hop, but in the realm of artistry.
Jesus Christ is going to be standing on the corner of Lenox Avenue and 125th Street.
The whole environment in black music, 69, 68 maybe to 74.
Centralized urban community. We're talking about Harlem, New York. You're talking about Philadelphia. You're talking about Southeast DC. Like you're talking about these central urban black communities and how drugs are being introduced into the community. People are getting addicted to the drugs, and it's beginning to take the bottom out of our communities.
Our declaration on war against drugs seems to have produced a war of words and not action. We permitted narcotics. I mean, we were complicitous as a country in narcotics traffic at the same time as we're spending countless dollars in this country to try to get rid of this problem. It's mind-boggling.
Going to LA in the early 80s had always been a lot of fun. There were a lot of clubs, there's a lot of funk parties.
In these times of hate and pain, we need a remedy to take us from the rain.
Now by 88, 89, it's changing. The gang thing happened. So I remember being at a hotel on Sunset Boulevard with my blue Yankee hat and being told, man, don't wear that to where we're going. Really? No, man, don't wear your blue cap, and don't, if you got red, please don't wear that either. You serious? I'm serious, yeah, don't.
As in the old days, the fights are over turf.
Our turf?
But now, the turf involves control of a drug market, and the battles are with heavy weapons to the death.
Los Angeles was a gang-infested situation. At the time, you had Crips, and you had what's called the Brims. Crips did this, the Brims did this. The Crips refer to you as cuz. The Brims refer to you as blood. And that's where the term, the Bloods, came from the word, the way we would talk. Yo, what's up, cuz? You say blood, I would know that you're from another set.
The actual warfare that is happening between rival drug distribution networks, that's what they become, is being exploited by the police out west in places like LA, because they've always been trying to crack down on black youth. So now any black person, whether you're living in the suburb like Compton, or you are an actual member of a gang, you are being targeted by police. You are being rounded up. Walking through a neighborhood, right? You are potentially a gangbanger because they're able to do it under the guise of drug intervention and gang prevention.
The Los Angeles Police Department became
infamous in the streets, especially for continuing to perpetuate a lot of the negative interaction that had existed between the quote-unquote overseer class, the white man in Southern California. What we saw was the police being overzealous and starting to raid boatloads of people unnecessarily and using a batter ram, which is where Toddy T was inspired to make his song. The LAPD had this ingenious, I guess in their mind, idea to use a batter ram to break down walls in order to conduct these raids.
What we then see in the music that is coming out of the West Coast is explicitly talking about, in ways that we don't quite hear in the same way in the Northeast, about a critique of power that's rooted in these interactions with the police.
6 in the morning, police at my door. Fresh Adidas squeaking across the bathroom floor. Out my back window, escape. Didn't even get a chance to grab my old school tape. Mad with no music, traffic is free, and the streets to a player is the place to be.
I had taken the hip-hop bug, but not as an MC. I wanted to be a DJ. And I found I got more attention rapping. And I knew how to rap. I knew how to say rhymes and stuff because I used to write gangbanger rhymes. And then my boy was like, say that you be saying on records? Like, yeah, say that. So we made 6 in the morning.
Had a beeper going off like a high school bell. Looked in the mirror, what do we see? Blue lights, LAPD.
Ice-T was 6 in the morning, he's running from the police because he doesn't think he's gonna have a good interaction with them. He's also running from the police because he knows that black and brown men are targets. The police had a reputation, unfortunately, as we see later on, of treating black men like piñatas.
SWAT team leader yelled, hit the floor. Reached in my pocket, put my 44.
The press said it's gangster rap, right? I was like, okay, gangster rap. Then I'm the original gangster.
Ice-T would be the one who changed what West Coast rap was going to be, and that is gangster rap.
My whole shape of understanding from the West Coast comes out of the seed of Ice-T on what's real and what was to be.
Chuck's view is more geopolitical, it's more about the world, and mine was more about the neighborhood. Mine was more about the politics of that city block.
When I hear gangster rap records for the first time, I had a context for it that was different than maybe other people did. A lot of other writers, because I spent some time out here and got more interactions and been realizing this is not like New York. Now, I've been in New York, and I've seen a lot of things in New York. I've never seen people just in the middle of the street face down in the hot sun. And they say, yeah, man, that's what they do here. So I started reading up on the history of LA police. William Parker, who designed the post-war LA Police Department, hired ex-military and Southerners.
We're talking about a Southern mentality in Parker. He wants racism and authoritarianism to be wed together.
A great number of those people came from areas in the country where they were much further dislocated, much more seriously dislocated than they are here. They came in and flooded a community that wasn't prepared to meet them, despite the fact that we got all this relief money going in there. We didn't ask these people to come here.
From the 1950s to the 1960s, Parker is redefining the mission of policing. Policing isn't just about solving crimes. Now it's about solving the social problem of black folk. Parker said explicitly, by 1970, half the city can be black, and if you don't have a militaristic police force, one full of warrior cops with an occupational force mentality, then God help you. The only thing standing between you and chaos is this thin blue line. Clearly fear-mongering and playing on racialized fear in particular.
Let's turn the inner city around. And I hear the same thing developing now. We want a stake in our community. We want to make the decision. Well, of course you do. And I'm all for that. They talk in the street vernacular. We think that's wonderful. But let's do something about 40 to 50% of our kids who drop out to do what? To get involved in drugs and crime. Let's do something about that.
Parker viewed Gates as a mentee and Gates Parker as a mentor. And Daryl Gates continued the tradition of saying outrageous things as chief of police. For example, that blacks were dying from police officer chokeholds because they had some anatomical quirk. So he carried on that Parker tradition, and he was allowed to because he was supported by much of Los Angeles, right? We're not talking about an institution that's out there acting on its own. We're talking about an institution that's acting in response to the democratic process that has said, we want you to be this kind of institution. We want you as our violence workers to unleash your violence disproportionately on these communities. And we're going to keep putting people like you in those positions. So these officers are very much just playing a kind of representative role.
All right, let's hit him.
In order to fight this wrong of crack in South Central Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Police Department decided, let's step up our enforcement and show people that we're serious. So when you have that type of environment, it's going to lead to disastrous results.
It is a war, cops against gangs. As in a war, the casualties mount every week.
I submit to you that Daryl Gates is causing the kind of polarization that is dangerous. That Daryl Gates, on top of the other difficulties that our community is experiencing, is exacerbating that problem.
Clearly, it didn't eradicate drugs, and that's why there was this built-up frustration and this built-up rage that bled from the streets to the music.
The police coming straight from the underground. A young got it bad 'cause I'm brown.
He was speaking directly to the hearts and issues of young black men at the time. Pac was able to, like, take the everyday life that he was even in the middle of and be able to come up with a great song. Tupac was a social commentator, but he was also a skilled rapper, MC, and had that revolutionary spirit.
Are you rolling, Eddie?
Okay. My name is Tupac Shakur. I think I'm growing up good, as in all sense of the word. I think I'm growing up and learning about responsibilities and everything. My mother was a Black Panther, and she was really involved in the movement, you know, just black people bettering themselves and things like that.
Our peer group, and they have no right to try us. They have no right to accuse us of anything. You know, and I say like, if the people want me to go on trial, I'm ready to stand trial for other people.
She could have chose to go to college and got a degree in something and right now been well off, but she chose to analyze society and fight and do things better.
When we think about Tupac, you can't understand Tupac as an artist, as a person, without understanding sort of where he comes from. This is a child of East Coast Panthers. They embraced a revolutionary critique of American society. Tupac coming out of that tradition, we see the critique of capitalism and the structures around us. We have to be supportive. We have to be together as we move forward in this world.
Tupac was a person that fearlessly said, you know, I'm going to take all of my attributes and all of my skill sets that I've learned and see if I can incorporate this into my arts as an artist and an activist and make it all work. And that he did. He's going to be so diverse. He's going to talk about single mothers, and Brenda got a baby, but he's got a touch in there that's like, whoa.
Brenda's Got a Baby, which I think is one of the more political songs in the history of rap, especially with regard to black women. And it's wild that it's coming from a black man, but it did. It didn't matter. The politics were always there.
He rapped about how Brenda's got a baby and threw her in the trash and what a horrible situation this is. He only did that because he knew of these stories and he knew of these realities and he wanted to change that.
Tupac made the hardest records ever to do that people were afraid to touch. You know, Keep Your Head Up and Dear Mama. Come on, man. Greatest rap, hip-hop songs of all time.
Tupac represented a lot of things to a lot of people. On the one hand, he was very thoughtful and supportive of women. On the other hand, he had a lot of songs disparaging women. On the other hand, he had a lot of political songs, and he had a lot of songs about how he wanted to shoot and kill people in the streets. People don't want to hear your righteous side anymore or as much because they're not looking at you like that. They're like, nah, he's raw, he's from the streets, he's hardcore, he's a gangster.
So when people think about 1994, people tend to think about the fact that that was the year that Tupac was shot 5 times. That was a year that he was found guilty of sexual abuse and sent to jail. Like, that was a huge year.
Mr. Shakur, can we get a comment from you at all?
Thug life.
Pardon me?
Thug life. Thug life. That's my comment.
What's that mean? I don't understand.
Tupac's persona blew up.
Yes, I am going to say that I'm a thug. That's because I came from the gutter, and I'm still here. I'm not saying I'm a thug because I want to rob you and rape people and things.
Was that everything that he was? No, it was a slice of what he was.
I think the general public lost touch with Tupac. They wanted to gravitate to hit him up and to the violence and to the rivalries. The fact that he had all of these other layers to him, and some of the political stuff just gets thrown by the wayside, unfortunately, because one, his life was so short, but then two, toward the end of his life, it was consumed by chaos and tumult.
It started to feel like hip-hop was losing its way. You know, the music was changing, the morals were changing. You know, the streets were becoming very dominant. It was the keep it real era, and keeping it real was going very wrong in a lot of ways, especially when you talk about losing two of the biggest artists in the genre at the time. We lost Biggie and Pac, 96, 97, and I feel like the genre in itself was at a huge turning point.
First off, in the click you claim, West Side when we ride, come equipped with game. You claim to be a player, but I f***ed your wife. We bust on bad boys for life. Plus, Puffy trying to see me.
Sure, Pac aggravated some people, no doubt about that. Tupac and other artists like Snoop and Dre became targets in the debate over censoring hip-hop.
We will begin the press conference. Marilyn?
Our crusade is against gangster rap, rap that glorifies and promotes violence with guns, knives, or drugs.
Dr. C. Dolores Tucker was a powerful voice standing against the hip-hop movement. She is someone who had been involved in politics. She had participated in the Selma to Montgomery March. She took a stand against misogyny in hip-hop, and that was a huge statement.
The gangster rap is not gangster rap. Much of it is just plain old pornography, period. It is unfortunate that these negative gangster rappers have learned to have such low respect for women, especially African American women.
If you go back now and you listen to the lyrics and then you look at her stand, she was right. The music was misogynistic. It did misalign and misappropriate the ways in which women show up in the space. The music was very, very dangerous in the ways in which people respond to black women. And for some reason it was okay. She was one of the few voices that said it was not okay.
The corporate gangsters in the entertainment suites, the true cause and propagators of this filth, not the young gangsters in the streets who are exploited, are merely the victims of the converging malign forces.
She said, listen, this ain't playing out well. What I see is the corporations that are pimping these kids, and they dangling them.
Nobody out here wants to look at the conditions and try to change them. Change the conditions, and then perhaps our music will change.
There's a rift that develops between the younger and older generation in black community.
It's so wrong. As a black woman, I am not a dog, and I refuse to be called a dog.
A rapper who changes from positive to negative just to get a record deal is just like a black man who will pimp his sisters on the street just to make money.
There are young folks who are making these records, they're selling them out of the trunk of their cars. And then you have the older generation, somewhat more conservative, religious figures like Calvin Butts.
Recognize that this poison kills. It kills young men and women. It kills old men and women. It promotes violence and sexism in our communities. It's dangerous to our police officers. It is just wrong.
It didn't have to be the Reverend Calvin Butts running over CDs in Times Square. It didn't have to be Dolores Tucker or any of these people that were just against rap. It was a constant battle and a constant fight.
You have the misunderstanding trying to govern the misunderstood. And so it was like all rap music, you know? It was a cultural division.
We hope to create a climate in our community that we believe once existed, where this kind of thing is so intolerable that people would dare not suggest that a black woman is a bitch or any woman is a female dog.
With so much drama in
And 9/11 happened, and everyone sympathized on America. And then we responded.
At this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
It used to be when we went on tour, the world loved America. But then that same big smile that we got when we traveled around the world, people were like, "You're from America. Why are you guys invading a country that didn't show any responsibility for the planes?" And so we wrote a song called Where's the Love? And I think the reason why that song made an impact, because everyone had that same question.
I remember when Where Is the Love came out. Honestly, I think it was difficult for some people to translate that to hip-hop, because it had pop influence.
What's wrong with the world, mama? People living like they ain't got no mamas. I think the whole world's addicted to drama. Only attracted to things that'll bring the trauma.
But for me, identifying with the Black Eyed Peas was easy. It was them rhyming on a track that was going to be received in audiences outside of hip-hop.
One of the lyrics in the song was, if you only have love for your own race, then you only leave space to discriminate. And to discriminate only generates hate. And when you hate, then you're bound to get irate. Because it made so much sense. It's like a simple way of saying, like, how can you only look out for your folks? Because then that means other folks looking out for their folks, and that's the whole concept of racism. You don't know how to work together.
Let your soul gravitate to the love, y'all.
People killing, people dying, children hurt, and you hear them crying. When you practice what you preach and what you turn the other cheek.
will.i.am knew where his core came from culturally. I need what's being said here to be received in not one household, not two households. I need this to be worldwide.
Selling 625,000 singles, Black Eyed Peas had the biggest selling hit of the year.
And it played all over American radio. Even in deep South states, they played that. That song became super important.
As the war in Iraq turned sour, thousands took to the streets to protest. That energy was brewing, and the hip-hop nation said, we ain't gonna take it no more.
Eminem is releasing a new anti-Bush video online, and I have to quote Salon.com, who says, it makes Fahrenheit 9/11 look like a GOP campaign spot.
Going to Bush, like I just reached a point where I felt like it'd be a real letdown to any of my fans if I didn't speak on, like, how I felt from the heart. America is the best place to live, I feel like. We live in the best country there is, you know, and there's supposed to be freedom of speech, and we got troops overseas that are dying, and I feel like, let's get this dude out of office, because if not, he's gonna spend the next 4 years, I feel like, driving our country in the ground.
Eminem became a lightning rod for whatever scared those in control in society. He wanted to poke fun at the facade of, or the hypocrisy of America.
Oh boy. When I was a kid, I just loved hip hop. I would just take other rappers' beats and loop them on a cassette tape and make raps. Just little old me. So when all these millions of people are listening to me, it was crazy to watch this whole thing. Like, people are tripping because I said that. And it made me realize, like, hip hop is having this effect on me, but it's having this effect on millions of other people too.
Eminem was a dope rapper. I first met Eminem right after he won the Rap Olympics. He became popular purely because of his talent and his skill set, and the fact that he was a white guy that was out-rapping everybody at that time.
What's up, baby?
You can't talk about Eminem without talking about Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre foresaw NWA and helped create what gangster rap music was, but he also understood the game needed changing. What Dr. Dre recognized in Eminem was that there's a place for poor white people to have say in this culture.
Eminem was not afraid to call out white America and say the word white America.
I never would have dreamed in a million years I'd see so many motherfucking people who feel like me, who share the same views and the same exact belief. It's like a army marching in back of me.
As a kid, you'd see MTV Raps and you'd see somebody like Ice Cube saying that, you know, we're just basically reporting to you what's happening on the streets where we live. A lot of the same was going on in neighborhoods that I lived in.
He was a white kid out of Detroit who had gone through hard times himself. He was able to reflect white America in ways that even black artists couldn't.
White America, I could be one of your kids. White America, Eric looks just like this. White America, Erica loves my I go to TRL, look how many hugs I get. listen to Eminem's early stuff, what's going on internally in the white home. He's writing you out. He's telling you, here's my struggle.
So to the parents of America, I am the damager aimed at little Erica. Spit liquor in the face of this democracy of hypocrisy.
What M showed the bigger world that hip-hop could do was unite people to understand that everyone suffers undeservedly. He participated in a culture he loved, and he brought new audience with him.
It's the huge explosion in legal downloaded music sales.
It had become so easy getting hold of music. Everything was available at the click of a button. And that made artists like Eminem just get bigger and bigger. It was the first time in hip-hop and rap music you could get somebody
Can I get a round of applause for that wonderful clips? I believe Dr. Lisa shared with you that it is streaming. I think it's a great opportunity if you have not seen the episodes in their entirety that you do pull together some time to do so. But I want to thank you all for being here, and so we're going to get to our conversational portion of the program, and so I'm going to introduce the panel, if you don't mind. And so moderating this outstanding discussion is a good friend of ours. She has been a part of our programs in the past. She is a reporter here in the city, been here for how many, 5 years now. She's brilliant, president of the Black Journalists Association that's here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and that is Miss Jatera McGee. And those of you that may not be familiar, Cincinnati is one of the few cities that has a hip-hop cultural center. And it is a treasure here in the city. Celebrating all elements of hip-hop, DJing, dancing, as well as MCing, art, graffiti, and things of that nature. And so we have with us the executive director for Elements, and that is Damian Hoskins. Now, you may have seen him in the video. He is a dear friend of mine, a brother in history and scholarship. He is an educator at The Ohio State University, where he teaches history there. He is a constant contributor on documentaries, such as the one that you have seen. He served as the advisor for that documentary, and that is Dr. Hassan Jeffries. And I am so excited to bring our next panel. I must admit that I am indeed a fan, and so I have to temper all that down to be professional. But it is indeed a pleasure to have a hip-hop trailblazer, a pioneer, to be a part of this discussion. It is wonderful, as he would say, he's here, R-A-W, the fabulous, outstanding Big Daddy Kane.
It is such an honor to be sitting up here with all of you. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I know everyone's going to rush home and watch the rest of those clips, all 4 episodes. So I'd like to start by talking about some of what didn't make the documentary that I know, as being a journalist, there's always a lot of really good content that you just don't have room for. Dr. Jeffries, I know you were an advisor to the film. If you could talk about some of those things that you think didn't make it that maybe should have.
Well, far more was left on the cutting room floor that made the film. And that's 4 hours worth of documentary film. In part because hip-hop is so large, both the origins, the genesis, the evolution. I mean, so not enough time and attention was given to artists who we are all know, not just the Tupacs and the Biggies, but regionally. So there was a lot, there wasn't much that was done on hip-hop coming out of the South. Miami, Georgia, Atlanta, but also the Southwest in Houston and Texas. I mean, so regionally, some of that regional variation didn't make this final version. It was a little bit heavy on the East Coast and the West Coast, I mean, which is understandable, right? I mean, the East Coast really generating, but then the West Coast bringing in sort of unique elements, because part of what we were trying to do was not just talk about the music, but also the context in which the music evolved. And so you had that sort of the two polar stars that were pulling on it. And of course, more could have been done on women in hip hop, not just as objects and subjects of the music, but as artists themselves. So there's a segment in the third episode, but certainly more could have been done, sort of weaving them throughout. That isn't so much a critique or criticism as it is a push for a sequel in which we can expand beyond what we already had in that one.
Yeah, in 2023, at a time that so many people think that we live in an equal society, although there are still those ongoing fights for justice and equality, do you think that women are finally getting the respect they deserve in the hip-hop space? Damien, I'll start with you.
Wow. This one. It's an interesting question. I'm not entirely sure that they are. I think this would probably be a better question for Kane, because he understands really the interworkings of the industry. And by the way, y'all, I'm sitting on stage with Big Daddy Kane. Just wanted to throw it out there. One of my heroes. But at any rate, I think that the industry itself is really set up to marginalize and capitalize on as much as it can. So it's a capitalistic industry, and so I don't believe that female MCs, the art of MCing, is being propagated and held in high regard as it once was. I think that the objectifying of women, even MCs, is what sells. And because this is a business, that's the thing that's gaining the most attention. The hope, however, is as hip-hop goes through its iterations and its phases and its growing pains, that there's a balancing out. There was a time where, female MCs were queens, and you know what I mean, and we held them in such higher esteem, not just because we respected them as women, but because they were dope MCs. Right, and so the hope is that the subject matter and the attention towards that level of detail to the artistry of MCing circles back to the forefront. But to answer your question, at this stage, I don't believe that that's the case.
Big Daddy Kane, what do you think, and how do we change that? How do we value women more in this space and in society as a whole?
Well, to answer your question, I would say that I think that right now, female MCs are becoming more and more popular, and they're pretty much the forefront of hip-hop at the moment. So popularity-wise, yes. Respected, no. No, I would not say that, because it appears that the popular female MCs in hip-hop right now are popular because of raunchy music, and that's what's getting them the popularity, as opposed to their skills or talent. Now, with that being said, I would like to acknowledge Lola Brooks, Lady London, Rhapsody, because there are a few young ladies out there that have, chosen to, I guess, use their own identity, and have their fan base respect them for who they are and their natural talents.
You're one of the legends that really started to get your rise in the late 80s, and I'm curious, as time has gone on and the decades have gone on, finally celebrating 50 years of hip hop, what you think needs to happen to keep it sustainable and relevant in the next 50 years?
I mean, I think that it's a job that really relies on radio, media, and the record company execs that's really, steering the direction of this whole thing. Because there's room for all of that. At the same time, when there was room for a Big Daddy Kane, a Public Enemy, there was also room for NWA, Uncle Luke. So, you had a lot of material, a lot of songs that had raunchy material, and then you had a lot of conscious hip hop and things of that nature, and underground hip hop and things of that nature as well. But the focus was not directly on one. And I think that that's something that needs to change, where as much as you want to promote someone that's, talking about how good their sex game is and all this here stuff, you want to promote a young lady that talks about, her life as a queen, or whatever message that she has to uplift women and things of that nature.
You also had a really interesting comment I came across online that you made last month, I believe. You said that the older and younger artists need to work together to sustain the genre. And I'm curious to you what you think that looks like.
Yeah, well, when I came into the game, I was able to sit down and conversate poolside with Barry White. Have conversations over a fifth of Hennessy with Rick James. Sit inside a hotel room with Jalil from Houdini. And these are people that was very successful before I even entered the game. And they gave me game. And they were telling me what I need to do, what I need to look out for. By the time the 90s rolled around, artists like Jay-Z, I took on tour with me. I'm talking to him about what this industry is about. Old Dirty Bastard from Wu-Tang. Him and Shaheem from Wu-Tang as well. They're spending the night at my house. And we're having these conversations, so I'm talking to the next generation. I think that there's a generation gap now where the past generation, like your Ludacris, Jadakiss, Lil Wayne, they don't. There's a separation where this younger generation don't have a connection with them, and they definitely don't have no connection with like my generation. But I think that that's something that's needed so that someone that has experienced this can educate them. Because there's things that they're going to have to learn on their own, but there's a lot of stuff that they can learn from our mistakes.
I can tell there's something you want to say, Damien. I know you're passionate about making sure that hip hop doesn't die, and also that it's celebrated and continues to thrive 50 years from now.
The work that we do at Elements is designed to expose the young people we serve to the creative economy and essentially prepare them for these creative pathways. And we leverage we're informed by what hip hop culture has done for everything. I defy anybody to find something that hip hop hasn't touched, from politics to education to fashion to absolutely anything, to any industry globally, and it's a global billion-dollar industry. And so I think that ultimately, however, when you think about it from an economic standpoint, as Kane mentioned, it's really easy to disconnect generations when you focus only on the materialistic side of things and not the sharing of knowledge, right? And so what we're attempting to do at Elements is to make sure that we're able to go cross-generationally and share information as freely and as broadly as possible, so that a part of our mission is to protect, preserve, and advance hip-hop as culture, as art, and as a global economic and creative force. We cannot do that, to his point, if there is a gap between generations. If the young folks are looking at the old folks and saying, or the older folks and saying, you know, you're out of touch, or if the old folks are looking at the young folks and saying, you're to this or to that, there has to be a way where we bridge, find some common ground. What I understand about hip hop, truthfully, is that the only barrier of entry, and Kane can correct me if I'm wrong, and Dr. Jeffries can correct me if I'm wrong, but the only barrier of entry to hip hop is that you're dope. Like, that's it. It's the most accessible American art form ever, right? You know, you don't have to have fancy equipment, a whole lot of money. You have to have a commitment to the craft. And in order for that to advance itself, there has to be a reconnection with that. But in order for that to happen, there has to be a reconnection with those who are masters at the craft, right? And so this younger generation, there should be a class at Big Daddy Kane's house. You know what I mean? Like, as a master lyricist and a person who understands the business of it and didn't allow the business to deter or have him water down his skill set, because that's what the business side will have you do, right? And so as we teach the next generation, we want to make sure that they understand that you do not have to sacrifice your gift for money.
I love the title of the film, how hip-hop impacted and changed the world. And I think at a time when books are being banned, when history is being questioned and challenged, and we all wonder what 2020 to 2025 is going to look like in the history books years from now, that's even more important. Dr. Jeffries, I'm curious from your experience as an educator and watching what's happening, especially in some of the southern states with critical race theory and some of the topics that are being left out of history and out of those lessons, if you think music and hip-hop are going to have to play a bigger role in trying to educate our youth, and if the genre is up to the challenge.
I think the genre is up to the challenge because that's what birthed the genre in the first place. The question is really, are the artists up to the challenge? In other words, hip-hop is the platform. Hip-hop in itself speaks to it. I think we have to make sure, and the way you make sure in part is by having that intergenerational conversation and connection. Say, listen, you have the party music, you have the release music, but then at the soul of it is this social criticism, is this education. So that has to, the hip-hop consciousness, that's an element of it too, in creating space. If that's not your particular flow, you're still helping create space for others and recognizing that's an important part of what that hip-hop conversation, that hip-hop discourse. So I think yes, and I think we'll also see it in those places that are being hit hardest by the attempt to roll back the clock. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see new sounds, new critiques coming out of Florida, if we see a new criticism, a new focus coming out of Mississippi and Georgia, because that's where you're having this sort of intense attack. And so I think hip-hop will respond because it has always responded. Now the question is, are we willing to listen to what our artists and our young people are saying when they're given the mic?
I love that in the clips that were chosen as experts did such a good job of this, of pointing out the ways that hip-hop always seemed to bring about hope when we needed it most. And I'm curious for each of you, because I know everyone's journey is different, what hip-hop meant to you, the hope that it brought to you in a moment that you really needed it.
Can you start? Sure. Oh my God.
When hip-hop brought you hope in a moment that you needed it, whether it was a song that you came up with or something at a time that you just needed a little bit of hope.
I think, so I was born in '73 too, the year that hip-hop was born, right? So it's always been sort of the soundtrack of my life. And I guess I couldn't find a time where hip-hop didn't influence any experience. So in the moments that were, most hopeless, would probably be centered around a girl. And so then you had LL, then you had, I Need Love, and then, you know, it really sort of took me to that space of sort of seeing hip hop as something much more archetypal, because I have this distinction that rapping is something you do, culture is something you live. And so hip hop culture was something that I began to embrace. And, you know, the things that you hear on the radio is commercialized, often commercialized rap music. When we went to the record store, you know, and, you know, we went to Everybody's Records up on, you know, in Pleasant Ridge, and every Tuesday a new album was dropping. And so when I felt those times of teenage angst or despair, or, you know, my family life wasn't going right, the first thing that really came to mind was finding the next best hip hop album. And I do remember in college, when I was going through a really tough situation, Common, his second album, Resurrection, dropped, and I used to love her. It wasn't on a video, there was no video, but my friend from Indianapolis brought the tape. And I listened to that song. I listened to that song ad nauseum because it was allegorical. It was a story. It was the personification of something that he fell in love with, and that was the culture. And that represented it for me.
Born in '73, same year, happy birthday, we're still standing, right? Which also means that we came of age in the 80s. We came of age listening to Big Daddy Kane. And it was, I mean, so for me it was, now it's classic rap, I guess. Now we done entered into the classic age, right? But it's still that original genre of the 80s, like navigating what the 80s were for me in Brooklyn, New York, and New York City. It was the mix of the smooth, but then it was also X-Clan, it was Poor Righteous Teachers, it was those who were providing this critique of the world that I was walking through, and yet I wasn't being provided any kind of explanation when I arrived at my destination in high school or whatever it was. And so it was, the hope was that I could escape and release with the music, but then I could also come back and find a lesson that helped me ride the subway, and understand why I wasn't walking home on on Nostrand Avenue to avoid this corner, and was going down New York Avenue to make sure I got home safely. And so again, it was youth, but that sort of set me on a trajectory that I could always go back there to find that artist that would allow me, that helped me navigate, you know, just what it meant to be a young black male, young black kid in America in the 80s, you know, trying to survive and trying to become a young man.
Good looking person. I didn't know that. I think back, and a monumental song. The time period where hip hop is really starting to grow, and the concert scene for hip hop is becoming humongous with touring on the regular. But lots of times there was violence. A lot of hip hop clubs were getting shut down. So for hip hop artists to come together to promote, you know, a song that's speaking against violence and trying to unite brothers and sisters to come together, have a good time, party, and go home, you know, and let's stop killing each other. And then it inspired, you know, like Mike Conception to create We All in the Same Gang, X-Clans to create Close to Crack House, you know, you get this whole collage of artists to all, you know, work on the same song. And I would pretty much bet money that it probably even inspired Gerald Levert to do the You Will Know for Jason's lyrics, you know, because it's pretty much around the same vein, you know. So, I mean, that self-destruction was something monumental, and I think that hip-hop really needed. Hip-hop fans really needed. It was something really monumental at that time.
There are a few artists that can have the hits that you had, but still be performing some 30, almost 40 years later. What's kept you going? What's kept you in the game?
Well, for one, let me not take all the credit for my creativity. Let's first realize that when I came out, hip-hop was still very, very fresh. And it was for an era that grew up in that sound. There was a sound we had then that, you know, like when it started going to records, they was using studio bands. Then after Sucker MCs from Run DMC, and then Marley Marl changed it to the sample era, which was basically the essence of hip-hop. Only difference was, instead of the artist rhyming over the break that the DJ was cutting, he was rhyming over the break that the producer sampled. So it went back to like the 70s, what the essence of it. And that's what a lot of us, you know, really got across during that time period. Myself, KRS-One, Public Enemy, MC Light, so many others. You know, so that represented an era and a time period. And I think that's one of the main reasons why artists such as myself, Light and all those, we stood the test of time, you know. I think that, but then also understanding individuality. That's also one of the main keys that I think that can be used in today's generation, the youth of today. That individuality, that thing that, you know, makes people identify with you as an artist. When LL came out, everybody wanted to wear the Bermuda Kangaroos like him. When Run DMC came out, you had criminals on the corner that's snatching pockets, but trying to run from somebody with no laces in their shoes, because they wanted to have, you know, the shell toes like Run DMC. You know, people wearing clocks like Flavor Flav, people rocking flat top hairstyles like me. You know, so it was like you identified with these artists. It was deeper than what was trending. I try to tell that to these young cats today, that, you know, when you make a song, you know, if they listen to that song and say, hey, you heard the new Little Uzi Vert song? Yeah, it's crazy. Mustard produced it. You just made Mustard big. If they say, you heard that new Little Uzi Vert song? Oh, man, Vert said yada, 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 yada. Now they're identifying with you because of your dope lyrics, something that you said that touched them. Back in the days when people would come to me and say, such and such is my jam. Oh, I play such and such every day. That was beautiful. But today, when people come to me and say, my song got them through college, my song got them through Desert Storm, that means the world. That means the world. Because that's an impact on someone's life from your music. You know, and I think that that's like the youth of today, they have to really learn how to really make people identify with them individually, as opposed to following a trend, because when the trend is gone, you're gone.
I think it's beautiful that give people their flowers while they're still here, right? That you've heard those affirmations from people of 50 years from now. What do you hope your legacy is within hip-hop?
My legacy? I guess I hope it is, you know, refer to me as a dope MC, and people refer to me as someone that shows love. Because
that was a very humble way of putting it.
No. I mean, because to me, it's important to pass on what I've learned. I think it's very important. And I want to try to help anybody that I can. I've been here lately going on a rant about this AI thing because I'm so worried about the younger generation, you know? I mean, stuff that I don't think is going to affect me because, you know, my generation is, you know, 50 plus. And no, I'm not telling what year I was born. I'm not telling y'all what year I was born. But my generation is 50 plus, you know what I mean? So it's like with us, man, we cool with Spotify. You know, we're not doing all that extra stuff. You know, but with this younger generation, it's the type of thing where First of all, a lot of them, when they perform, they just stand in one spot and just bounce up and down, right? A lot of them lip sync, okay? Their audience, and some of my audience do too, but their audience, the majority of their audience, watch the show like this with their phone. So it's only a matter of time before this AI thing kick in where they're using, you know, artificial intelligent voices and hologram images to create artists that you don't even have to go to a venue to see. You can just buy and download it on your phone. And that's going to have a whole lot of the younger generation unemployed in hip-hop, where they will not be relevant. And I would hate to see that happen. There are a few that I think, you know, can stand the test of time, you know. I think that the Migos, even though, you know, rest in peace, Takeoff, I think that, you know, even though, you know, there's only two of them now, but I think that they're unique. I think on what I just saw on the BET Awards with Lola Brooks, I thought that she was phenomenal. And there's, you know, there's a few that I think get it, or maybe they have someone older giving them the game. But whatever the case may be, I want to see the younger generation learn how to perform so that you cannot be replaced by AI, not be replaced by a hologram, because you're an individual that people want to see. They don't want to see an image of you. They don't want to hear a fake version of your voice. They want to see you, and you have to really build that up with your fan base. And that's something that I try to teach them more, because I don't want to see the game messed up where, you know, 3 years from now, you know, certain artists that was bubbling, was popping, they're like, you know, wow, what happened, you know?
I'm so glad you brought up AI, because I was going to ask you all about the future and what concerns you or worries you about the direction or the path or the obstacles that hip-hop may face over the decades to come. I think AI is a huge one, but I want to give you, Damien, and Dr. Jeffries a chance to weigh in on that as well. What worries you about what's next, what we can't see?
I think the thing that worries me the most is the disconnect from the culture completely and the artistry that birthed the culture. That really sort of worries me. I think the more we get into these, you know, the advanced technology and the monetization of artistry, the less we are connected to the artistry itself, and the focus seems to change. Even though, you know, we're in a generation where technology is ubiquitous, I vehemently disagree with the fact that technology has to play a role in artistry to that degree. You know, I think, you know, the thing that made me fall in love with hip hop is the fact that there was a connection to something that was raw, something that was visceral, something that, you know, was creative in the sense that it was developed out of a sense of necessity almost. Right, and that is endemic to minority cultures for sure, but a lot of times marginalization of cultures and economic disadvantage breeds that kind of ingenuity. The more access that you have to technology and mass consumption, the more you consume, the less you have time to produce. And I think that one of the things that concerns me the most is the focus on that level of consumption and not that level of production. And I hope that with artists like Rhapsody and Chica and all these, you know, there's a underground almost of MCs and DJs and B-boys and B-girls and fashion designers and everything that, you know, that are influenced by hip hop, that love the culture. They're still connected to that production, that artistry. And I'm hoping that those are the ones who get a rise to prominence, and the impact is so substantial that those who are following trends look at those individuals and say, wait a second, this is going to pass, this trend is going to pass in the next few years. Let's do something that's going to have a legacy, like, because without Kane and his legacy, there is no Jay-Z. There is no Jadakiss. There is no Black Thought. There is no 3 Stacks. You know what I mean? Like, that's the precursor, but because of his artistry. They weren't trying to mimic Kane. They were trying to be inspired by that artistry, right? And so the hope is that we can return to that level of artistry. Without that, my fear is we will fall the way of consumption.
Yeah, and I think the connective tissue between what you both said is the one thing that I think can kill hip-hop, is the one thing that can kill almost anything in this world, and that's capitalism, and particularly corporate-led capitalism, because that can suck out, and I'm not talking about artists being paid and being able to earn off of their creativity. I'm talking about the kind of corporate capitalism that prevents that, that crushes artists, that creates a single sound, that can say if it's more profitable to have a hologram than to have an actual artist, then the creativity and the social message and the social meaning and the sort of the organic nature of hip-hop can be killed, can be crushed. It's a miracle that that hasn't happened already, which is a real testimony to what hip-hop is, that it hasn't completely gone the way of something like country music, for example. But that doesn't mean that it possesses some type of natural immunity. If there's enough money to be made in it, then those forces of corporate capitalism will be aligned against it, and it really runs the risk of losing that which was central to its existence. So I think artists and those committed to music, as well as those who enjoy it, have to be aware of that and have to push back against them.
Well, the wheels are already turning, brother. The wheels are already turning. I mean, ever since hip-hop became this popular, where it is right now, it grows $23 billion this year, you know, and it's a form of music where once an unaccepted genre, now every other genre wants to incorporate hip-hop into it. So corporations, they understand, you know, the corporate world understands the strength of it. And when it, as you said, you know, becomes a corporation, like any other, now we're talking mass production. And what happens is quality goes out because quantity has to come in. And it's already happening. And it's always been happening in music. And music has always been happening. The band got replaced by the keyboard. The keyboard got replaced by the sampler. You know, I mean, that's the way it goes. But the one beautiful thing, I think you said you're not sure what it is. So with the internet, it's the type of thing where you have so many people looking for so many different things, you know. And I think that what really needs to happen is more outlets like Rock the Bells, what LL is doing with Rock the Bells. Like, you know, we have a lot of online presence that supports hip-hop. But, I mean, one's just, I guess, really focused on the culture, because that's the thing a lot of people don't understand. Hip-hop, when it began, it didn't begin as music. It began as a culture, okay? It was the DJ, the MC, the b-boy, the art, the fashion, the slang, all of that was hip-hop. There were DJs like Disco King Mario, Disco Twins, Grandmaster Flowers, that was rocking outside, you know, before Kool Herc in 73. There was DJ Hollywood, Eddie Chiba, rhyming on the microphone since 71. You know, there were I forget the Breakers. No, the Nigger Twins. Before in the early 70s, you know, Kool Herc created a culture. He took all these elements and incorporated them into one. So what you grew up witnessing and listening to was a whole cultural thing, a way of speaking, a way of dressing, not just a sound. There's so much more to it. But now once it became corporate, now it's just a genre. You see what I'm saying? And like pop music is a genre. Country music is a genre. So it's like all the culture of it is like starting to evaporate. And we need those type of outlets that respect the culture and want to keep those elements present. That's what's necessary.
Big Daddy Kane, we know you have a show to do in just a couple of hours. You need to rest your voice. But if you could, just a few closing seconds, tell us, go ahead and plug your next project. I know you have a Netflix special coming out, and of course, people can still see you this evening.
She asked you to drop some lyrics. No. She said next project.
I have a documentary coming out called Paragraphs I Manifest. It's all about the importance of lyricism in hip-hop. And it features Common, Jay-Z, Snoop, Eminem, Lady London, MC Lyte. We even have a few of the pioneers like Melly Mel, Grandmaster Caz, some of the well-known battle rappers, Averb, Goods the Animal, J. Cole. A lot of people just talking about the importance of lyricism and what it took for them to write some of their greatest hits, and just how important lyrics are to them.
I'll just extend you another invite on behalf of the Freedom Center to come back and talk about that in a few months. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as we bring the program to a close, I was going to ask our president and COO, but I don't think that he's here. So I'm going to just provide these closing remarks. But before I do that, I would like to bring to the stage, before when everyone was coming in, we had the music and sound of DJ Guy West. If we could just want to acknowledge you. Thank you for blessing us with a critical element of hip-hop DJing, keeping that alive. Definitely, once again, want to thank Dr. Lisa and PBS and CET for the wonderful work. Want to acknowledge her as well. And so, but at this time, we definitely, I would say right now is the time for you to get out your phones if you haven't taken a picture, because we have to keep things moving. And so this is a historical, monumental panel that you have here. This represents the culture, the history. It's very important. It's intergenerational. I want to thank Jatera McGee for moderating. Outstanding. I want to thank Damien, absolutely. Damien Hoskins as well in the work you're doing with Elements and also being an educator teaching about the culture of hip hop. Definitely so if we can give him a round of applause. Dr. Hassan Jeffries for continuing to be a driving force in our educational system through various different platforms. We appreciate you. And last but not least, Big Daddy Kane, thank you for blessing us, sir. Thank you for blessing us, taking the time. And so as y'all exit out, I see you at the turntables. You gonna give us some music, exit out music? All right, I appreciate that. DJ Guy West.
We all agree tonight, all of the speakers have agreed that America has a very serious problem. Not only